So there's going to be a ranking of all the films directed by Christopher Nolan. This is a video I've had ideas on doing for a while. Originally, I was hoping to do it when Tenet got released in 2020, but with Oppenheimer dominating the award season, it seems as good a time as any to finally put this video together, besides waiting a few more years for Christopher Nolan's next film to come out, which I don't really feel like doing. Christopher Nolan is the most influential director in Hollywood right now. As a true auteur, the man is definitely a super genius when you see the kind of thought that goes into his films. He's one of few directors, Tarantino being the other one, whose name can really sell a movie, and we've seen this play out with all the hits he's had in the theaters ever since The Dark Knight. So all 12 films he's directed will be featured on this list, going from worst to best. So sit back, relax, and I hope you enjoy. Incomprehensible is the only word to describe Tenet. Seriously, what the f***? This movie was released in theaters in the teeth of when everything was shut down in 2020. Nolan was adamant that he wasn't going to allow Warner Brothers to put this film on streaming. This was the only movie that I actually saw in theaters in that post-March 2020 theater shut-off point before everything reopened spring of 2021. I was definitely super grateful to be in the theater watching a movie. I love that Nolan's adamant about the in-theater movie experience. But while watching this movie in the theaters, this was the only time I had to pull out a film's wiki while watching the movie to figure out what the hell I was watching. The dialogue, the constant explanations, exposition, the storytelling, I just think it's bad here. There's being complex, which most other Nolan films are, and there's just being flat out incomprehensible. In watching the film the second time, I found myself hanging in with the film, a bit more with the basic story threads in the first half. But there just comes a point in the second half of the film when the protagonist, yes, that's his actual name in the film, goes back in time to a different point, and then I just ended up throwing up my hands, just like, all right, I don't get it. The hand-to-hand fight sequences here, though, are fantastic, especially when the ones that involve that whole reverse time gimmick concept. But all the other action, while well shot, was just boring in one note. Definitely that action in the final section when the soldiers are just shooting at buildings and all that other shit. It just sucks though, because you can see that there's a whole lot of great filmmaking involved here, and it's always great to see an original blockbuster concept rather than another sequel or remake. But this movie shows that there is such a thing as being too complex, even for Christopher Nolan. Maybe it's a film I'll be able to get behind one day, but as of the few times I've seen the film, yeah, it's just kind of tough to get behind.
You want to crash a plane, but not from the air. No, it's so dramatic.
Following was Nolan's first movie, a very small budget feature debuting in 1998. It's described as many as Christopher Nolan before he was Christopher Nolan. Shot in black and white, it tells the story of a writer who follows strangers in search for inspiration for his stories. He ends up following and befriending a burglar and gets entangled in the whole crime love drama. What's amazing is, like many others after watching Nolan's mainstream work, is seeing all of his filmmaking signatures are here in his very first movie. That sharp, smart dialogue, that love of that neo-noir style of filmmaking, and unconventional story structure as far as sequencing of events goes. It definitely has that full circle moment at the end where you're like, oh shit, all of that makes sense now and was very well set up. By the end of the movie, a filmmaking genius was born. Insomnia is the only Nolan-directed film that he also didn't write or co-write. Released in 2002, his third film, it tells the story of a cop played by Al Pacino who is trying to uncover a murder mystery of a teenage girl in Alaska. His investigation gets interrupted when he attempts to cover up his accidental shooting and killing of a fellow cop working the case. As Nolan didn't write the film, it isn't as literally unorthodox or the mindfuck that most of his other writing-directing efforts are. It does feature an overlooked part of his films, which is how great he works with actors. Great actors like Al Pacino and Robin Williams look even better under his direction. And the less crazy narrative works in the movie's favor as you're able to focus and enjoy the character dynamics, story, and performances, along with signature Nolan great direction. The Prestige was Nolan's fifth film. Released in 2006, it tells a story in the 1800s of two magicians who develop an intense rivalry stemming from an accident that killed one of their wives. They then try to get the upper hand on each other by trying to sabotage each other's career. This is done in smart, clever ways. It's entertaining to see Nolan's take on the workings of magic. I will say, though, that out of all of Nolan's films, I feel like the play of non-sequential storytelling here was a bit pointless and intrusive in this otherwise entertaining face-off between Hugh Jackman and Christian Bale's top-notch magicians, leading up to a typical Nolan mind at the end. The Dark Knight Rises was the finale for Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy. Given the critical praise of its predecessor, Rise definitely had its hands full in living up to that film and closing the trilogy. The film has all the plot intricacies and sophistication from the first two installments. It's a film grand in scale with its characters and how things escalate to the finale, with the kind of threat that Gotham faces at the end. I definitely think Rises works as a conclusion. As a Batman film, it definitely has some issues. The major one being that given the nature of the story here, there's large chunks where there's no Batman at all, as Bane and the other supporting characters take center stage. Though I believe this was problematic for the film's rewatchability, it does have its payoffs in how it builds up emotion for Bruce Wayne, who naturally is the heart of the story here. But I don't know, something about the story here just didn't feel quite exciting enough. It's of course great seeing Nolan's spin on classic Batman characters, seeing his version of Robin and what he came up for Talia in this film. The movie has a beautiful ending. Profound and majestic would be the best way to describe it, and definitely feels like a final chapter. But I would still have to rank it last among the other installments in the trilogy.
My mother warned me about getting into cars with strange men.
This isn't a car.
2014's Interstellar could be described as beautiful. The way it showcases space travel, the scenery, there's just a real majesty behind it. That's just wonderful, and the score throughout the film is truly beautiful. It just feels like great classic filmmaking, a la 2001: A Space Odyssey, which Nolan says he was influenced by that film in the making of this film. Additionally, emotional isn't an adjective I'd often use to describe Nolan films, but arguably the best scene in the whole film is McConaughey's his character's goodbye to his daughter as he leaves for his space mission. Though I would describe all of this as beautiful, I would also describe the film as at times ridiculous. That final section when Cooper enters the next dimensional portal that brings the movie together in classic Nolan fashion is a wow moment. But forget about science, it's just magic by the end. I also admittedly didn't love the whole Matt Damon section in the film when his character comes in, and also the scene where they describe love as a science or a justification for what they're doing. It was like, what the am I watching here? There's flaws throughout the film here and there, but it's definitely still a worthwhile movie to check out.
We'll find a way. We always have.
Memento was Nolan's second film released in 2000. Compared to his first film the following, it looked much more like a mainstream movie, even though its production was on the very cheap side even by the standards of when it was released. It tells the story of a man named Leonard with short-term memory loss Finding Dory style, as he tries to uncover the mystery of someone who raped and murdered his wife. Given his condition, he has to constantly write down notes, take pictures, even tattooing clues on his body, so he can stay focused at the task at hand. The premise is interesting enough here, but where the movie really with you in typical Nolan style is how the sequencing of events takes place and is all over the place here. Given Leonard's condition, you'll see how a scene takes place from his surprise point of view because he can't remember anything. But then afterwards, you'll see the events beforehand leading up to that, and you'll be like, oh, very clever, Nolan. It's a movie that's super aggressive with its non-linear storytelling. To its mostly benefit, there are times where it can be tough to keep up with the delicate plot webs as the movie is jumping all over the place. But if you can hang in there till the end, the payoffs definitely make it worth it. Inception was Christopher Nolan's first real I can do whatever the I want movie. Before, he was known as the guy that made that great Batman movie. But after the critical and box office phenom that was The Dark Knight, Warner Brothers gave him a blank check to let him do whatever the hell he wanted next, and thus came Inception. In my modern era of watching movies, this was the first ever time watching a movie in the theaters that I was watching a real thinking man's blockbuster. As I watched the film, I was like, whoa, this ain't exactly for the casual Joe looking for a movie with some fancy explosions while I eat my popcorn. Like basically all other Nolan films, it's a very tight narrative, but one that's super aggressive with its explanation of dream concepts to make this world of dreams make sense as the team is going on this Inception mind heist. The best way I would describe watching this movie is fascinating. It's an intricate puzzle piece making sense of this world and everything going on here, especially as time becomes a factor as the team goes deeper and deeper within the dream. The major part of the movie that I did not care for was the snow section towards the end. I just thought that the action in that third level was incredibly boring and the pacing just felt off. But oddly enough, my favorite part of the movie ended up being Cobb, Leo's character, the stuff that he had going on with his wife, Maul, played by Marion Cotillard. As shown in The Dark Knight Rises, she knows how to play a crazy really well, and that story had the most rewarding moments in the film for me. Oh, and for those wondering, yeah, I don't think he was dreaming at the end. In 2005, Batman Begins was Nolan's first mainstream film, as he was tasked with taking on the origins of the Dark Knight. The film set the foundation for the whole Dark Knight trilogy, as the goal here was to have a Batman world where the setting, action, and characters were all grounded in realism, in an obvious attempt to get away from the camp of the later 90s Batman films. Even often cartoonish characters like the Scarecrow fit into this more realistic world that Nolan created. In true Nolan fashion, I don't think there's ever been a better done origin story than the one done right here for Batman. Every detail is given attention to here. Everything from the parents' tragedy, his training, the gadgets, the suit, the alliances, is captured beautifully, with the first half of the film featuring Nolan's love for non-sequential storytelling. I truly believe there hasn't been a better done superhero origin film than the one done here in Batman Begins. The only thing that would come close is Sam Raimi's first Spider-Man film, but as great as that film is, the filmmaking in that film doesn't compare to Nolan's Batman Begins.
Guy dresses up like a bat clearly has issues.
Dunkirk isn't really a traditional ABC story movie, rather than it is just sort of a war showcase. As within the Battle of Dunkirk, it follows the fashions on the land, sea, and air. In Nolan fashion, though, these storylines are taking place in different time spans until the battle comes to its conclusion. The movie just looks fantastic. There's very little CGI shown here, and you get consistent, gorgeous wide shots of the air, land, and sea. It has some of the best sound work I've ever heard in a movie. The explosions, the gunfire, the plane engines, it really feels like you're there. And despite not being rated R, the movie still showcases some solid war intensity that you'd want in a film like this. I do think that the movie made the right choice in being more of just a progressive showcase war film rather than a traditional ABC character feeling movie. The initial times watching this film, I felt it kind of cold when it came to the characters, until more recent viewings made me realize that, that was actually the point and helped the movie be more straightforward in what it was trying to do, which it did very well. Oppenheimer is Christopher Nolan's most impressive achievement. How he was able to take the non-action spectacle story of J. Robert Oppenheimer and the creation of the atomic bomb and turn it into a cinematic epic that grossed almost $1 billion is something only he could do. The movie is just a masterclass as far as narrative storytelling goes, as it's juggling showcasing the life of Oppenheimer up to and including the detonation of the bomb, the private court hearing, the more public court hearing, and all the in-between stuff with Lewis Strauss. The combination of Oscar-caliber performances from Cillian Murphy and Robert Downey Jr., Nolan's great direction, and the non-linear storytelling hold your interest as there's proper build-up to the creation and detonation of the atomic bomb. The first 2-ish hours of this film, everything up to and including the detonation of the bomb, were brilliant. The final 40-ish minutes of this movie were admittedly a bit much, as it was all the court drama stuff, which while there was definitely some interesting stuff there, the movie did feel like it was just going in circles and there wasn't a whole lot of forward momentum, with the major thing keeping me engaged were the scenes where RDJ locked up his Oscar. The overall movie is still brilliant and to be admired, but like a lot of other movies, it could have been shorter. The movie's financial success though, again, making almost $1 billion despite its subject matter, plus being R-rated and 3 hours long, is just incredible. While it's unclear how much of that can be attested to the whole Barbenheimer gimmick, the overall movie here is definitely one that rightfully should have wanted to be seen by many.
8, 7, 6.
And here we go.
The Dark Knight is a magnificent film. This 2008 sequel to Batman Begins is top-notch in basically all aspects. I mean, holy shit, this is one of the best scripts and screenplays I've ever seen. Like all of Nolan's films, it's way more than the surface-level main plot of Batman vs. the Joker. Nah, the script is way more deeper than that, as it seamlessly weaves so many different story and plot lines into one epic narrative, obviously highlighted by Harvey Dent's transformation into Two-Face. Even little things like that Wayne Enterprise employee who discovers Batman's identity, while initially a minor scene, has a purpose later. You know, there's no fat to trim in this film. Every bit of dialogue, action has a purpose here. There's obviously a lot of great filmmaking involved here, but the Joker was definitely the element that took things to another level for most audiences. The late great Heath Ledger was obviously phenomenal in the role here, but Nolan wrote just such an excellent character that fit into this world he created, and is without a doubt one of the best characters in film history. There's just so many iconic moments throughout this film.
I'm gonna make this pencil disappear.
I'll never forget that feeling I had coming out of the movie theater that opening weekend on a Saturday in 2008. And I came out thinking, holy shit, you know, that's the best movie I've ever seen. And 16 sweet years later, I feel the same way. A round of applause for what I believe to still be Nolan's best film, The Dark Knight. And there you have it with my ranking of all films directed by Christopher Nolan. I would have loved to have this video done when Oppenheimer came out, but better late than never, and it did give me time to rewatch all of his films before doing this video. I love it when a filmmaker has a signature style. That's what being a true auteur is all about, and Nolan's style has been one beloved by critics and audiences for the last few decades, culminating in the success that Oppenheimer just enjoyed. So that'll do it for this ranking video of all Christopher Nolan films. If you made it to the end of this video, thank you for watching.